There is a plant growing beside fences, in garden beds, and through cracks in forgotten pavement. Most people pull it out without a second thought. Yet for thousands of years, this same plant was harvested, cooked, stored, and even cultivated as food. Its common names sound ordinary: lambsquarters, white goosefoot, fat hen. Its scientific name is Chenopodium album, a close relative of quinoa, spinach, beets, and Swiss chard. Unlike those familiar crops, however, lambsquarters asks for almost nothing. It appears wherever soil has been disturbed, spreads rapidly, and survives conditions that would weaken many cultivated vegetables. What makes its story remarkable is not simply that it is edible. It is that entire cultures once recognized its value, while modern society gradually learned to see it only as a nuisance. Somewhere between ancient fields and suburban lawns, a useful plant lost its place in our collective memory. How does a crop become a weed? How does food become something people are taught to poison? And what else disappears when the name of a plant is forgotten? Its story begins thousands of years before modern America. Welcome to Botanical Vault, where lost knowledge is brought back into the light. Today, we open the record of one of the most overlooked edible plants in North America, a survivor still hiding in plain sight. Long before corn dominated the fields of eastern North America, communities across the Ohio River Valley were building an agricultural system of their own. In rock shelters, caves, and ancient storage pits in places such as Kentucky and Tennessee, archaeologists have found thousands of preserved seeds buried beside squash, sunflower, and other cultivated plants. The seeds belong to Chenopodium berlandieri, a North American relative of modern lambsquarters. Their presence was not accidental. They had been gathered in large quantities, stored for future use, and treated with the same care as any dependable food crop. Microscopic analysis revealed the clearest evidence of domestication. Wild Chenopodium seeds usually carry thick protective coats, but the cultivated examples had much thinner shells. That difference mattered. A thinner seed coat allowed water to enter more easily, encouraged faster germination, and made the plant more predictable for farmers. Over many generations, people had deliberately selected the seeds that performed best. This was plant breeding, practiced thousands of years before European contact. Just as wild grasses were transformed into wheat and teosinte eventually became maize, Indigenous farmers reshaped Chenopodium through observation, selection, and patience. By around 1700 BC, domesticated Chenopodium had become an important part of what researchers now call the Eastern Agricultural Complex. This network of native crops supported communities across the region for centuries. It included squash, sunflower, sumpweed, little barley, erect knotweed, and Chenopodium. Then maize began spreading north from Mesoamerica. It produced large harvests, stored well, and gradually became central to farming systems throughout eastern North America. As corn gained importance, many older crops were planted less often. Some survived as wild plants, but the carefully selected domestic forms of Chenopodium eventually disappeared. The plant itself remained. What vanished was the agricultural tradition built around it, and the evidence shows that North America was not alone. Across the Atlantic, people were also gathering and storing close relatives of this forgotten crop. Its story therefore reaches beyond one region or one civilization. Wherever human beings learned to recognize resilient plants, Chenopodium offered leaves, seeds, and dependable nutrition. The archaeological record preserves more than food remains. It preserves evidence of knowledge, planning, and sophisticated ecological understanding. The story of Chenopodium did not end in the valleys of ancient North America. Across Europe, archaeologists have uncovered the same pattern. Seeds gathered in quantity, stored with familiar grains, and consumed as part of ordinary life. At Iron Age settlements in Germany and France, Chenopodium seeds appeared in storage pits beside wheat and barley. Roman-era sites produced similar finds. Later, Viking communities in northern Europe also used the plant, suggesting that it remained useful across changing cultures and centuries. Some of the most haunting evidence came from Danish bog bodies. Preserved for roughly 2,000 years in acidic peat, several individuals still contained plant remains in their digestive systems. Among those final meals were Chenopodium seeds. These discoveries do not prove that everyone ate the plant every day, but they do show that it was familiar enough to become part of a normal meal. Its value was not limited to the seeds. Young leaves could be boiled, added to soups, or cooked like spinach. Mature seeds could be ground, mixed with other grains, or prepared as porridge. The plant offered 2 harvests from a single season: tender greens first, then edible seed later. That tradition never disappeared everywhere. In India and Pakistan, Bathua remains a valued winter vegetable used in flatbreads, curries, and yogurt dishes. In Mexico, Lambsquarters belongs to the broader tradition of quelites, edible wild greens gathered for flavor and nutrition. Similar practices survive in parts of China and among families who continue to pass plant knowledge from one generation to the next. For thousands of years, Chenopodium was not mysterious, dangerous, or worthless. It was simply food. The plant survived around the world. What changed was the way modern societies were taught to see it. And once perception shifted, an ancient crop became an unwanted weed. By the time European colonists expanded across North America, agriculture was already being reorganized around a narrower set of crops. Wheat, corn, and other commodities fit the new economic model because they could be measured, transported, taxed, and sold at scale. Plants that grew outside that system were gradually pushed to the margins, even when they had once been useful foods. Lambsquarters survived because it did not depend on cultivation. It appeared in farmyards, construction sites, roadsides, and freshly disturbed soil. That resilience kept the species alive, but it also changed its reputation. Instead of being seen as a crop, it became associated with neglected ground. After the Second World War, that perception hardened. Suburban development spread rapidly across the United States, and the uniform green lawn became a symbol of order, prosperity, and respectability. Any plant that broke the pattern was treated as a defect. Lambsquarters, which thrives in exposed soil and germinates quickly, appeared wherever land had been cleared for houses, sidewalks, and gardens. At the same time, selective herbicides such as 2,4-D became widely available. These chemicals gave homeowners and farmers a faster way to remove broadleaf plants while leaving grasses or certain crops standing. The result was not a secret campaign against one edible species. It was a larger transformation in how modern landscapes were managed. Farmers also had practical reasons to control lambsquarters. In fields of corn, soybeans, sugar beets, and vegetables, dense populations can compete aggressively for light, water, and nutrients. One mature plant may produce tens of thousands of seeds, and some of those seeds can remain dormant in the soil for years. Left unmanaged, the plant can return season after season. So lambsquarters became a weed, not because it had lost its nutritional value, but because it grew in places where people wanted something else. The same qualities that once made it dependable food now made it difficult to control. That distinction matters. A weed is not a botanical category. It is a judgment. It describes a plant growing in the wrong location, under the wrong economic system, at the wrong moment in history. And once that judgment became normal, generations stopped asking whether the plant they destroyed might be worth eating. Now we reach the part that has made lambsquarters famous in modern foraging circles: its nutritional value. The plant is genuinely impressive, but the truth is more useful than exaggerated comparisons. Young lambsquarters' leaves provide vitamin C, provitamin A carotenoids, calcium, iron, riboflavin, manganese, and a meaningful amount of plant protein. In several analyses, the leaves compare favorably with cultivated greens, such as spinach and cabbage. But those numbers are not fixed. Nutrient levels change with the species, the soil, the age of the plant, the season, and whether the leaves are measured raw or cooked. That distinction matters. A cup of raw leaves cannot be compared honestly with a cup of cooked spinach, because cooking reduces volume and concentrates the serving. Headlines often ignore that difference, turning useful nutrition data into impossible promises. What remains true is remarkable enough. Lambsquarters can serve as a dense seasonal green, especially when harvested young. Its leaves contain pigments and minerals that support normal vision, bone health, blood formation, and metabolism. It is food, not medicine, and it should not be presented as a miracle cure. Its value comes from adding diversity to a diet, not replacing every vegetable on the plate. There is also a reason traditional cooks usually heated it. Like spinach, beet greens, and Swiss chard, Lambsquarters contains oxalates. The plant may also accumulate nitrates when it grows in heavily fertilized soil. Boiling or steaming the leaves, then discarding the cooking water, can reduce some of these compounds. For most healthy adults, moderate portions of properly identified, clean, cooked leaves can be used much like spinach. People with kidney disease, a history of certain kidney stones, or medical restrictions involving oxalates should seek professional guidance before eating large quantities. The important lesson is not that Lambsquarters is secretly superior to every food in the supermarket. It is that a plant dismissed as worthless can contain real nutritional value. The science does not weaken its story. It makes the story stronger, because no conspiracy or impossible statistic is required. This overlooked plant was useful all along, offering nutrition through resilience rather than through marketing, packaging, or industrial cultivation. Lambsquarters survives because it is designed for uncertainty. It appears quickly wherever soil has been disturbed: construction sites, garden beds, field edges, compost piles, and ground exposed by drought or cultivation. Its seeds wait patiently beneath the surface, sometimes for years, until light, moisture, and temperature create the right conditions. The plant is not indestructible, and it does not grow without water. But compared with many familiar leafy vegetables, it can tolerate a wider range of soils and periods of heat or dryness. Young leaves often carry a pale, powdery coating made of tiny, waxy structures. This surface helps protect new growth and may reduce moisture loss during stressful conditions. Its greatest advantage is reproduction. A healthy, mature plant can produce tens of thousands of seeds. Not every seed germinates immediately. Many remain dormant, building what farmers call a seed bank beneath the soil. That is why Lambsquarters may return even after several seasons of control. The plants visible above ground are only the latest generation of a much larger reserve hidden below. These traits make Lambsquarters difficult in commercial fields, where it can compete strongly with crops and complicate harvests. Yet the same traits also make it interesting as an underused food plant. It can emerge without irrigation systems, plastic packaging, or repeated planting, and its tender leaves can provide a seasonal substitute for cultivated greens. That does not mean it should be allowed to spread everywhere. In a soybean field, a dense stand may reduce yield. In a home garden, allowing every plant to mature and release seed can create years of extra work. Useful management means choosing where it belongs, harvesting it before it becomes dominant, and preventing unwanted plants from producing seed. Climate instability is forcing agriculture to reconsider neglected species. Lambsquarters will not rescue the global food system by itself, but it offers an important lesson. Resilience often survives outside the crops we have chosen to standardize. A plant can be food in one place and a weed in another. The difference is not the plant, The difference is knowledge, location, and intention. The final step is learning to recognize Lambsquarters safely. Its young leaves are usually triangular, diamond-shaped, or shaped like a goose's foot. They grow alternately along the stem, and the newest growth often carries a pale, powdery coating. Its flowers are small, green, and tightly clustered, rather than bright or showy. No edible plant should be identified from a single feature, a photograph, or a short video. Young Lambsquarters can resemble other species, including plants that should not be eaten. Use reliable field guides, compare the stem, leaf shape, leaf arrangement, flowers, and habitat, and confirm the identification with an experienced local forager or botanist before harvesting. Location matters as much as identification. Do not collect plants from busy roadsides, sprayed lawns, industrial ground, contaminated soil, or places exposed to animal waste. Lambsquarters can absorb substances from the soil, including excess nitrates and unwanted pollutants. Once correctly identified, harvest the tender upper leaves and young stems before the plant becomes tough. Wash them thoroughly and cook them as you would spinach. Steaming or boiling is the safest traditional approach. The value of Lambsquarters is larger than one meal. It reminds us that forgotten knowledge can survive in ordinary places. A plant dismissed as a nuisance may still carry evidence of ancient farming, global cuisine, and human adaptability. This is Lambsquarters, not a miracle and not an enemy, but a resilient food plant worth understanding. If this story changed the way you see the ground beneath your feet, subscribe to Botanical Vault, turn on notifications, and share this episode. Every recovered name helps preserve knowledge that was almost forgotten.